All right, here we go. You have a conversation, you're doing your cold calling. Matter of fact, what you did is you sent out a couple of e-comps like we recommended yesterday. You get a response from someone and they say, you know, I received your comp, what deal was that? So they get your e-comp and you begin the conversation. And they said, that property sold for that much per square foot? I have a property that is similar in the same sub-market, and hopefully if things haven't changed too much, maybe I could sell it for that kind of money. I'm going to send you over the financials. Year to date for last year, all of last year and year to date for this year. I want you to take a look at them. And then tomorrow, if it's convenient, I'd like to meet you for lunch and get your whatever you call that thing, you know, where you give me your value and the broker says, oh, we call that broker opinion of value, or BOV. They said, I'd love to have one. So they send you an email, and as promised, you get this attachment. And you spend some time analyzing the information, and here's what you find. The property has gross operating income of $2,150,000, and you look at it and you say, you know what? That looks about right for that property. Operating expenses are $763,000, and you say for that property, looks about right. You make a couple of phone calls to friends of yours who are mortgage bankers. You've closed several commercial loans with them over the last 2 or 3 years. You describe the property to the lender, and they say, I'll tell you what we could do. We could do a loan 70% loan to value at 4.25%, amortized monthly for 25 years with an 8-year balloon. You're in the know, and the investors that you have spoken with day in and day out say, you know, you find me this kind of deal, I'd be looking for something around a 7% cash on cash return. Fair enough? I've given you the exact number of pieces of information you need. Matter of fact, I gave you one extra. If you look at the information, what do you think is the one piece you really don't need to do your BOV? The balloon, you're exactly right. So let's say that's the red herring. So here's what I want you to do. This is a straightforward question that brokers are asked every single day. Here's my property, here's my financials, what is it worth, right? I mean, this is like, if you started in the business on Monday, you probably learned this Tuesday or Wednesday. So I want you to work in teams of 2 or 3. I want your teams, I'll give you 5 to 7 minutes because it won't take more than 5 to 7 minutes. And then you're going to turn in a sheet of paper with your BOV. The one who gets it correct wins the listing. So the team that gets it correct wins the listing. Y'all with me? So this is a right down the middle, no curveball. I mean, this is sort of like the everyday activity that we as commercial brokers do. And you have the exact number of pieces of information you need. You got it? So take your 5 to 6 minutes, break your calculators out. After you determine what is your broker opinion of value, you'll write it down on a piece of paper, turn it in to me, and then we'll go from there. Fair enough? Go. I have your BOVs, and so I'm interviewing several brokers for this assignment. Tim, wouldn't that be the right thing to do? So I'm interviewing several brokers, and I'm impressed as the seller. We have one BOV that came in at $12,248,000. We have another BOV that came in at $9,267,000. We have another BOV that came in at $19,814,000. And I know what y'all did on that. You used 7 as the cap rate, which, by the way, would have been the right cap rate had it been an all-cash buyer. So had this been an institution, you could have maybe used 7, but this isn't an all-cash buyer. They've got leverage, don't they? So if you use the cap rate of 7, guess what you didn't take in consideration? The debt. We got another $918,814. Then, I love this one right here. We've got another BOV, Jim, for $30 million. So there really isn't much disparity. We've got one BOV at $30 million and one at $9 million. So, well, here's what I'm doing. I'm listing with the team that came in at 30, but when I buy in the future, I'm going to use the team that came in at 9. So I now have my team that is my seller team. Or here's what I'm thinking about doing. Seeing if the people at 30 million have a buyer, I'll just list it with it. Then I got another 19,814,000. Oh, this is good. Here's another, this is a 9.7, another 9.7. Why? What cap rate did the 9.7? What cap rate did y'all use on that? You didn't?
No, I calculated it at 10, and then I divided it by. I did it. I took it 70% of the value at 10.
Wait, you divided it. You did what? This is a new technique. We're going to call this. We're going to name it after you. You know how like there's the different theories. This is. Please don't tell me anymore because it could get stuck in our heads, and we wouldn't want that. It's like 18.7. That's good. And then 19.8. Now watch carefully. I'm going to show you the 6-step best practice in determining broker opinion of value. But in today's market, you need to know when not to use it. Because there's a good chance that even though your math is correct, you could lose the listing. We do a lot of training for capital markets. We probably train more multifamily brokers than maybe any other firm. They have been on a tear for years. When I have 50 of them in a room, I'll say, how many of you have sold a property for more than your BOV? How many you think raise their hand? All of them. So by doing a BOV, guess what? You run the risk of losing the listing because there's so much demand out there. We're seeing these incredible increases in prices. So we need to know when to use a BOV and when not to do a BOV, but you need to know at least how to do it. So I'm going to give you the 6-step process, and as I said, it was fortuitous that this deck was not in your distribution because the process was in there, and I've inadvertently kind of given you the roadmap. Here we go. Gross operating income was $2,150,000. You feel comfortable with that number. $763,000 in operating expenses. 70% loan, 4.25%, paid monthly, 25 years, 8-year balloon. Equity is looking for a 7% cash-on-cash return, and the BOV must be precise and based upon the best available capital. And we have two parties to this dance. We have the lender and we have the equity, right? So here we go. There was multiple choice. 19,814,000 was kind of popular, and I know how you got to that. You just used 7, right? Now, here's one way to do your BOV. You go into the conference room with a Ouija board. And with the Ouija board, you say, what number do we give the seller at lunch today? That's an aggressive number, but we don't look crazy, right? I know how y'all are doing BOV. You're going in there, it has nothing to do with cost of capital. You go in there, and I've seen it. You got this exotic spreadsheet with numbers all over the place. Looks like a dartboard, but you go in there and say, what number do we put in there? That really is kind of a stretch number, but it doesn't look like we're being unrealistic because then we'll lose credibility in front of the seller, right? That's not BOV, but at least you put that in there. And the one thing that happens is then the seller says, how did you get to this number? And you find that they've given you 45 minutes to make a presentation, and you're having to spend 30 minutes to defend a number that really can't be defended because it's not rooted in sound, logic. And then another way, besides a Ouija board, which has become very popular, is a seance. It's where you go, and have you ever noticed these houses that they do that spiritual reading? Have you ever noticed that? They're open at 4 o'clock in the morning. Who's going to these places at 4 o'clock in the morning? And I've always noticed there's like BMWs and Mercedes that are in the parking lots that belongs to the person doing the sale. Am I making that up? Is that the truth? You drive by at 4 o'clock and they don't have a customer, but there's a brand new S-Class Mercedes. So for those of you that real estate might not work out, that could be an alternative career because it looks like you get a nice place to work and a very nice car. The hours are a little unusual. Here's the 6-step process. And this 6-step process is not an elective curriculum. It's mandatory. Anyone that's serious about commercial real estate knows the 6-step process. Step 1, determine the net operating income. Step 2, determine the loan constant. I don't know if there was a one of you that got the loan constant. Step 3, determine the WAD, loan to value times loan constant, gives you the weighted average of debt, which is the debt portion of the cap rate. Equity times the cash on cash return then gives you the weighted average of the equity. WAD plus WAY gives you the cap rate. Then we divide the right cap rate into the NOI. This 6-step process has been around the 43 years I've been in the business, and I use it. I sat on a board of an office REIT for 15 years. I was on the investment committee for like 6 or 7 years, and every time our chief investment officer would bring me a deal, I'd bring out my 6 steps. And I'd say, Jim, I see what you want to ask the seller. Where is that number coming from? Because I know what the loan's going to look like, and I know what kind of return we want in equity. I'm just a little curious. Well, then he would talk about a 5-year IRR and all that kind of stuff to justify paying this outrageous price. So let's go over each one of these. And again, Jennifer's going to get you this slide deck. Step 1, gross operating income of $2,150,000 less $763,000 gives you $1,387,000 in net operating income. Who got that? So I am delighted to hear that you're able to do basic math, that you're able to subtract. So all of you were able to subtract the expenses from the gross operating income, right? Step 2 is to get the loan constant. 70% of my cap rate is going to be a lender obligation. And there's 3 ways that you can get the loan constant. This is the shortcut. I take my calculator out, making sure it is on 12 payments per year, all right? I go 25 shift key in. I put the interest rate into I, which is 4.25. I put 12 into PV, and I solve for payment. I'm at Ruth's Chris calculating this BOV, and all I need is my iPhone, and I download the HP 10B2 app, which costs $5.99. If you've got an Android, you can get the same one, what do you call that, the Google Store? Google Play. You've got, are you on an iPhone or a Droid?
Samsung Droid.
On a Samsung, and so there it is, and it's a wonderful app for about $5, right? And so it's one less device. I can't help myself. I still carry the 10B and my iPhone, and I have it also on my iPad because you can hit 2X and it's twice as large, right, Jim? So now this is the loan constant. Now I could spend 30 minutes on loan constants. Annual debt service divided by the original loan amount is the formula. And for years, you know, we teach the 6 functions of a dollar, and you're probably wondering, why did Mike use 12? Well, the reason I use 12 is I'm going to make 12 payments, right? A payment each month. So the loan constant is 0.0650. Silly question. Why is the loan constant bigger than the interest rate? The loan constant is larger than the interest rate. Why is that? Come on. Say again? Yeah, principal. So the interest is in there, but guess what? This lender, what did they want? They didn't want just their interest. They wanted a little bit of principal back each month. Had this been an interest-only loan, what would the loan constant have been? This isn't a trick question. No, it wouldn't have been 7% because that's the equity. Had this been an interest-only loan, what loan constant could I have used? 4.25. But this loan had amortization. So I had to be mindful of, when putting together my cap rate, if I didn't use the right loan constant, we know the lender's going to get their P&I, because Tim talked about foreclosure and all that awful stuff yesterday, that in the event I don't make my mortgage payment, guess what? The property's going to become the lender's. So I better use not just the interest rate, I better use the loan constant, because they want principal and interest each and every month. So this is step 1. Step 2. I take the loan to value because 70% of the cap rate belongs to the lender. So I multiply 70% times the loan constant. This is where weighted average of debt, or WAD, comes from, all right? So now I at least know that the cap rate's going to be at least 0.0455, but that's only 70% of the cap rate because there's going to be some equity involved in this deal. So far, so good? So I at least have a big chunk of the cap rate, but now I need to get the equity portion of the cap rate. So step 2 is, step 3 is loan to value times the loan constant, and in this case equals weighted average of debt. Now comes step 4. I take the equity required to close, which is 30%, times the cash on cash return, which in this case is 0.07. And so now I have the equity portion of the cap rate, which is 0.0210. Now, on rare occasions, for any of you that have taken any MAI courses, know that this is called band of investment. And they also will instruct you on what's called modified band of investment, where instead of using the CCR, cash on cash return, they use the internal rate of return, or the hurdle rate, which really makes it a very challenging cap rate. But I've seen both used. But 9 times out of 10, most will use the CCR, cash on cash return, as opposed to the internal rate of return. Fair enough? So now I've completed step 4. I've now got the equity portion of the cap rate. Well, now I'm almost home free. Now step 5. I take the WAD, which is the debt portion of the cap rate. I take the equity portion of the cap rate. I add the two together, and now I have the exact cap rate of 0.0665. And if I use this cap rate, and I'm not going to make you do it today, but we used to do it in every class, we'd say, now let's prove that this was the right cap rate. Let's get the mortgage, let's make our payment, let's have CFBT, cash flow before taxes, and let's make absolutely sure that this gives a 7% cash and cash return, and mathematically, to the dime, it'll give you exactly what the investor's looking for. But if we put the wrong mortgage on there and don't use the right cap rate, the lender's not going to be the one to be penalized. Guess who gets penalized? The investor, who wanted a 7% cash and cash return, gets something less. Now, they never call you back a year later and say, you know what, this cash flow isn't what I thought it was going to be. Rarely does that happen. They just think something weird happened to the income or to the expenses, who knows what, right? But this is how, if the buyer says, I want 7%, this would be the cap rate that they should use if you felt strongly that was going to be the net operating income. Now comes the final step. I take the NOI of $1,387,000. I use the cap rate of 665, and I come up with $20,857,000 and change. And if you ever want to test this, take 70% of that and pay your mortgage, take what's left over, which is the cash flow, and divide it into the 30% of this sales price, and I can tell you, you'll have exactly a 7% cash on cash return. It'll be perfect. But what happens is you're out there representing buyers and you tell them about the market cap rate. I don't know what the market cap rate is. The cap rate is specific to the investor's criteria. Now, if it's unreasonable, they're not going to be buying in this marketplace. But each cap rate is unique. It should be customized based upon the best available mortgage that I'm able to get today for this property, and it's based upon the unique requirement that this investor has. Now, if your requirement is unreasonable, well, you're just not going to be buying. But if yours is reasonable, the deal should be structured in such a way that you get the return that you wanted.